the cum father's secret stash. Come stomp me flat. I'm going to fuck your dad. Coming high into the morning sky. Vape come from my bum till I die. Watching Arthur with a cock in my ass. Riding hard, eating ass masterclass. Sacred cum blade, fuckling crusade. Fatal cum theft, give me cum or give me death. Elon's Musk, Jesus crust. Stealing donations from the cum czar's trust. A cum smoothie, gulp smoothly. Consume the cum chalice, fuck everyone named Alex. David Hayter, cum crusader. The holy cum wars, razor blade masturbator. Margaret Thatcher, the cum snatcher. Father drowned, going down on the cum clown. Prolapse pounding, toothpick sounding. Cum baking, my nipple pussy is aching. Cum fooler, semen drooler. Forbidden cum spice, your shitbox looks nice. Life is a cage, and death is the key. All your cum are belong to me. Normalize crying over spilled cum. Making cum angels with my son. I fucked a fairy in half. How many holes does a human have? My butt and cunny are in agony. Castration in the sky, your penis will fly. Scrotal chambers, semen sailors. Mommy's cum tax, grind my balls on an axe. Cum scented candle, cum broiled eggs. Cum Christ consciousness, third eye, cum spy. Cum squote sailboat, semen speed racer. Off-road, cum chode, my uterus came out. Cum treasurer, dick measurer. Irresponsible manager of cum. A cum slave, back from the grave. The price for breaking a cum oath. James Hector, cum collector. I tripped in the cum keeper's crypt. Cum feeder, moist meter. Sans undertale, the cum reaper. Fucking a skeleton, right in the pussy. The dark souls of cum. Cum framed and cum blamed. Cum drowning awareness day. Brewing cum fuel after school. Your nipples are crunchy. The tragic cum sponge. Your cum is fading. Sweep up the cum flakes, Joan.
Therapeutic breaks?
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
Like a therapeutic break, like a beat that can ascend to a couple different planes in one therapeutic session, while the ionizer and diffuser are both running.
Is that what you're playing in your car
Identify
now?
one to hook up any sort of humidifier if you want to get any sort of Bikram chakra action happening at the same time. I want to be able to be full serviceable.
What is that sound in the background? Is that a therapeutic break?
I don't know. You tell me.
I'm not an expert in this. This is not an area that I'm not a therapeutic center, and the store isn't. We have products, but we can't design something for you that's going to be therapeutic for your patients. We do not have the expertise.
I mean, is your aura currently sensationalized?
Right now, the noise in the background of you is like really putting my whole aura and everything else off kilter. It's horrible. And I can't listen and I can't think.
It's not therapeutic? Therapeutic breaks?
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 Therapeutic breaks.
Therapeutic breaks.
Therapeutic breaks. It's really horrible for me. That's personal. You know, every person is different.
I know, but that's
But
why I
that's
need
about to
something
drive
that's...
me over the edge. If
That's
you're
why it's
looking
gotta
at
be...
therapy, I can see why your clients are complaining.
Oh, jeez.
Okay, here's
Yes.
what I have.
Yeah.
It has deep alpha. There's hemisync has inner journey. Do not listen while driving.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the issue as well, because some of these things, we don't want to look at we don't want to get any sort of brain trapping. We want to make sure we're completely open with our pathway.
Then there's Between the Worlds, Dreamlike Shamanic Landscape.
No, nothing demonic, please.
Shamanic, like a shaman healer.
Yeah, okay. I thought you said demonic.
No demonic. Dreaming Gate, enter another shamanic dream time with the entrancing with didgeridoo. I don't know if that's something that works for you or not.
That wouldn't be confluent, because since it's from a different hemisphere, the frequencies don't really interact with my ionizer.
Let's see. I can start up. Oh my god. He's saying he fucked something up. Did he miss schedule or some shit? I got shit to watch anyway. Yeah, the Armenian fight video was fucking great. We can watch that for a little bit. Hold on, I think my kid's woken up.
Press the K key for accessibility options.
Video is unavailable. The fuck did you do? Yeah, I made a big fan. You'll be seeing this, but not for a while. My bad. See you in a few hours. Oh my god, you fucking loser.
I would like to say that you know, this Kyle guy is a flight risk. He's facing long time in prison, and he has people out there that will help him, organizations of militia members that are raising money for his defense right now. They can harbor him. He can
Your Honor,
hide
I'm going to
out in
object to
there.
this. There's no basis in fact or
Mr.
law.
Mr. Richards,
Kyle Rittenhouse thinks he's above the law. He's been treated as such by law enforcement. And so he believes he's justified in this case. And for him to run wouldn't surprise me. And this defense, self-defense, that is impossible. That is impossible. I don't know what part of the video you watched, but he already killed a guy, shot him in the head,
watch this video.
and then tried to run. And my son was a hero. He tried to stop him, and so did everybody else. He was an active shooter, and he tried to flee. And my son lost his life protecting other people. He was a hero. And anyone who says otherwise is dead wrong, including the president, to comment on that. How dare he? He needs to just stay on Twitter.
Watch the video.
all right, good afternoon, everyone. Let's call the first matter, State of Wisconsin versus Kyle H. Rittenhouse. It's 20 CF 983. May I have the appearances, please?
State appears by Assistant District Attorneys Thomas Binger and Jason Zapp.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
No,
Mr. Rittenhouse appears via Zoom with Attorney Mark Richards.
Good afternoon. Other appearances, please?
Attorney Kimberly Motley appearing on Zoom with my client Gage Grosskreutz. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Steve Art for John Huber, the father of Anthony Huber, who is on as well.
All right, good afternoon to all. Any objections raised by anybody regarding having this hearing held via the Zoom application?
No, Your Honor, I discussed it with my client.
All right. Okay, hearing no objections, then the court will make a finding that good cause exists to hold this hearing via the Zoom application, again, based upon the coronavirus pandemic, as well as orders previously entered by the Supreme Court for the State of Wisconsin and the Kenosha County Circuit Court, further barring any objections raised by defendants and or defendants' counsel or others. All right, matters here for initial appearance. On behalf of Mr. Rittenhouse, Mr. Richards, have you received a copy of the criminal complaint?
Your Honor, we would acknowledge receipt of the criminal complaint, waive its reading, request a preliminary hearing, specifically object to any probable cause finding for count 6. If one reads section 948.60, it talks about a minor in possession of a firearm, and then specifically goes on to subsection 3, subsection C, which states the only way a minor can be prosecuted for this offense with a rifle or a shotgun is if in fact it is not in compliance with section 941.2A, which is the short-barreled shotgun, short-barreled rifle statute. There is not probable cause contained within the four corners of the criminal complaint for this charge.
All right, thank you. Well, first off, I'll note that let's take up the matter first of, although that's a misdemeanor charge, let's take it up at this point in terms of the state's response to that objection or motion to dismiss on the part of, raised on part of Mr. Rittenhouse. Mr. Binger, will that be you or Mr. Zapp addressing the court?
I'll address the court, Your Honor. With regard to count number 6, the defendant is charged with being in possession of a firearm as a minor. There's no dispute in this case that he was in possession of a firearm and was under the age of 18. Counsel is referring to the subsection 3 of the statute, which is 948.60, which carves out a few exceptions. Sub 3C as an exception, and counsel cited the statute. I think the statute's actually 941.28, which alleges that a minor who possesses a short-barreled weapon, short-barreled rifle or shotgun is in violation. We're not alleging that, but it also says or is not in compliance with statutes 29.304 and 29.593. Now, those statutes pertain to hunters. They pertain to hunter safety courses, hunter certifications, and basically that's designed for minors who go deer hunting with their fathers, let's say, during deer hunting season. There is absolutely no allegation in this case, no facts, no evidence. No one is suggesting that the defendant was hunting,
Yeah.
at least not legally, not hunting game, didn't have a license or a certification, no indication he's taken a hunter safety course. This is not a hunting case. This is a case in which he used an AR-15 to kill 2 people, and he used it while he was underage. So I don't believe that the motion to dismiss count 6 should be granted. Thank you.
That's not what the statute says. If Mr. Binger would just look at the 4 corners of what the statute says. It says that if it's 941-28 short barrel, that's how it can be prosecuted. Other things can be prosecuted under the hunting statutes. It has nothing in there regarding hunter safety, hunter this, hunter that. The statute is clear on its face. I've made my argument.
I have 2.
All right, well, for today's purposes, I'll tell you what, you can, obviously, for today's purposes, I'm going to deny the motion, but you may re-raise that issue in the future. I suggest, and perhaps, Mr. Richards, you put it into writing, bring it back, and then that way we can, I'll take another look at it if you want. But for today's purposes, I believe the 4 corners have been met with respect to count 6, so that'll remain. As to the remaining counts, you requesting preliminary hearing then at this point, Mr. Richards?
Correct.
All right, then we'll have the matter set on for preliminary hearing. Request is noted and entered for the record. As to bond, Mr. Binger?
Your Honor, the state is going to ask the court to set bond at $2 million. That is the amount that Judge Wagner set on the arrest warrant in this case. I believe that this court should honor that amount. There are numerous very powerful and valid reasons why appropriate amount in this case. The defendant is charged with 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide as well as other very serious felonies. 2 people were killed in this case. These charges are as serious as we get in Wisconsin. There is a certainty that if the defendant is convicted, he will be sent to prison, and a strong likelihood that he will serve most, if not the remainder of his life in prison if he is convicted of these charges. Thus, a substantial amount of cash bail is necessary because someone who's facing these types of charges has the strongest possible incentive not to return to court. I would note that the defendant does not live in Kenosha, does not reside in Wisconsin, and other than a part-time job as a lifeguard, doesn't appear to have any ties to our community. He resided at one point in Antioch, Illinois. However, it's my understanding that the residence or the address that his family resided at, they no longer reside there, perhaps due to some threats or concerns over their safety. But I don't know what their current address is. I think that they are, perhaps for good reason, not sharing that address. But nonetheless, the fact of the matter is, if the defendant's released from custody and joins his family, it will be at some undisclosed location. So that is cause for concern. We extradited the defendant from Illinois over strong objections from the defense. There were multiple hearings in Lake County as recently as Friday, in which the defense had filed numerous motions and arguments challenging this case and challenging Wisconsin's right to extradite the defendant. I take that all to mean that the defendant doesn't want to be here, and if released, won't come back. So I think that that is something the court should consider very seriously. The defense will suggest that the defendant turned himself in on the night of this incident and therefore is not a flight risk. I would suggest to the court that the circumstances have changed substantially since the defendant did that. At that time, perhaps he had the mindset that he was justified in what he was doing, that the police would hear his explanation, give him a pat on the back, and send him out the door. Clearly, that's not what happened. Clearly, he's facing serious charges in this case. And whatever his misguided or unreasonable expectations were that evening when he turned himself in, do not apply any further. We are in the midst of a very serious case here. The court, Judge Wagner, has already set $2 million bond. I think that's an appropriate amount, and I would ask that the court honor that. In terms of the non-monetary conditions of bond, we would ask that the court order that the defendant not have possess or have any weapons in his possession. I would also ask that the court order no contact with the following individuals: Gage Grosskreutz, Richard McGinnis, Dominic Black, as well as relatives of the victims in this case, including John Huber, who is here by Zoom, Karen Bloom, who is Anthony Huber's mother, and Charles Rosenbaum, who is a brother of
I wish I
the
could see
victim,
his reactions, like his face.
Joseph Rosenbaum. Thank you.
All right, and Karen, did you say Bloom? Is that B-L-U-M or a different spelling?
I think it's B-L-O-O-M.
That's correct.
O-O-M? Okay, all right, thank you.
I heard the government's argument. Last time I checked, having went through an extradition hearing is not a valid basis to have a higher bond when one is only asserting one's constitutional right to have that hearing. Further, on the video, which this criminal complaint is based on, it's clear that the client, Kyle, tried to turn himself in to law enforcement. They chose not to accept his surrender. He went to the Antioch Police Department, where he was from. He turned himself in. He waited for the Kenosha Police Department to go there. The criminal complaint is full of material omissions, whether through negligence or through recklessness. It doesn't talk about Mr. Rosenbaum chasing my client while masked, covering his identity. It doesn't talk about Mr. Zeminski, his partner, firing the first shot at my client. When my client is running down the road trying to get away, he goes and Mr. Groskowitz approaches him and goes, "Where are you going?" "Going to turn myself into the police," which he tried. It's on video. My client is 17 years old. He has no prior juvenile, no other record whatsoever. He has ties to the community. His father lives in the community. He worked in the community. The self-defense claim in this case is overwhelming. It's on videotape. And under all of those circumstances, $750,000 and electronic monitoring is more than sufficient. We have no objection to the non-monetary conditions, but at a certain point, the state can bury their head in the sand. And in reality, who struck my client first? Who attacked my client first? Mr. Rosenbaum, the decedent. My client's running down towards the police line when he's attacked by a mob. We're not talking about demonstrators. We're talking about rioters who had ill intent in their heart, and unfortunately, they came in second.
Oof.
All right, thank you, Mr. Richards. Court's aware these are allegations, but they are the most serious of allegations. They're incredibly serious. And again, if the conviction occurs, and only obviously if the conviction occurs, the defendant would likely face either life imprisonment or an imposition of many decades. Oh, I'm sorry. Also, before I go further, though, I do want to hear from the victims, if I could, if they do wish to be heard in this part. Mr. Huber, do you wish to be heard, sir? You'll have to unmute yourself then, sir. Mr. Huber, you're on mute. Can you unmute your device?
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can, sir.
Okay, good afternoon, Your Honor. I would like to say that, this Kyle guy is a flight risk. He's facing long time in prison. And he has people out there that will help him. Organizations of militia members that are raising money for his defense right now. They can harbor him. He can
Your Honor,
hide
I'm going to
out in
object to
there.
this. There's no basis in fact or law.
Mr. Richards, that's Mr. Huber's opinion. He may state his opinion pursuant to the current status of the law in Wisconsin. I'm going to allow him to state that position. What I take into account may be different, but at this point, Mr. Huber is allowed to state his position as a victim in this matter. Go ahead, Mr. Huber.
Yeah, Kyle Rittenhouse thinks he's above the law. He's been treated as such by law enforcement, and so he believes he's justified in this case. And for him to run wouldn't surprise me. And this defense, self-defense, that is impossible. That is impossible. I don't know what part of the video you watched, but he already killed a guy, shot him in the head, and then tried to run. And my son was a hero. He tried to stop him, and so did everybody else. He was an active shooter, and he tried to flee. And my son lost his life protecting other people. He was a hero. And anyone who says otherwise is dead wrong, including the president, for to comment on that. How dare he? He needs to just stay on Twitter. You know, he already admitted to killing 2 people in Antioch. He told the police, I killed 2 white guys. Okay? So he's already admitted it. And, you know, people buying him an assault weapon, they're responsible also. You know, who gives a kid an assault weapon? Says, well, go to Wisconsin. You know, that's, this is what we're up against here. It's not about self-defense anywhere. And if you can double his cash bond, that's what I'm for. I'm for doubling his bond. It should be $4 or $10 million, because there's people out there raising money right now, making it their own fight, that it's about gun rights, and it's not about gun rights. My son was killed. Another man was killed. They didn't deserve to be killed. And we don't have that society where we just let people go and kill people and say, oh, you guys, we'll push them down there and you guys kill them down there. Because that's what the police did here. And the police weren't doing their job, or else they wouldn't have asked for these people to come around. You know, he was 2 businesses away when he chased that guy down and shot him in the head. That's far. He chased him down to kill him. And that guy was unarmed. And my son was unarmed. He hit him in the shoulder with a skateboard. You know, he was a hero. Anyways, that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hubert. Mr. Grosskreutz, did you wish to address the court?
Your Honor, I'll address the court on behalf of Mr. Grosskreutz. Thank you very much. We do agree with what Mr. Huber has just said, that Anthony Huber was in fact a hero, and our condolences go to you. I think it's inexcusable, the behavior of Mr. Rittenhouse. We believe that he's a significant flight risk. We also believe that his bail should be set at a minimum of $4 million. We believe that he has shown himself to be a flight risk, because even though he may have been running past police officers with his hands up, it didn't stop him from jumping in a car and then driving past numerous police stations that night, when he could have turned himself in that night in the state of Wisconsin, and he failed to do that. We believe that Mr. Rittenhouse is a significant danger to the public as well, and we ask the court to impose a significant amount of bail. As Mr. Huber just indicated, there are numerous organizations and people that are raising money on behalf of Mr. Rittenhouse. My client has faced significant threats to his safety from numerous people. We're not attributing that to the defendant at all, but we are concerned that if he is released, that those threats will increase significantly. And so we ask the court to take all these things into consideration, the arguments of the state, as well as the arguments from Mr. Huber, and to impose, at a minimum, a $4 million cash bail. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now, well, as I said before, the charges are incredibly serious, and again, and only if conviction occurs, there would be a likelihood of an imposition of a mandatory life sentence, or at least significant amounts of time, likely decades of time, period of incarceration. That is very concerning to this court. The issue for bail is to secure the defendant's appearance in court. In this case, that I note that, as I said before, the exposure is great. There's a report that Mr. Rittenhouse did flee the scene of the occurrence. He left the state, as a matter of fact, was then involved in a contested extradition hearings to be returned to the jurisdiction of Kenosha County. Mr. Richards is right, does have a right to contest extradition, but the issue that this court has to determine is what, pursuant to the statutes, are what issues are there with respect to the basis of whether or not Mr. Rittenhouse is a flight risk or not. Now, again, I don't feel that at this juncture, at this point in time, Mr. Rittenhouse has significant ties to Kenosha County, and as such, I believe that there's a reasonable basis to believe that a very significant cash bond is necessary to assure this defendant's appearance in court, as the court does believe that he is a flight risk. Based upon the comments I just made. And in addition, the case, as Mr. Richards has brought up, he did surrender himself to Illinois authorities, but circumstances appeared to have changed at some point following that with respect to the extradition issues. But again, that's not, this court doesn't take it, hold it against Mr. Rittenhouse, if you will, in terms of exercising his constitutional rights in the state of Illinois. More to the point about whether or not Mr. Rittenhouse will appear as required in the state of Wisconsin in Kenosha County for court and court appearances. The court, as I said a minute ago, does believe that for the reasons stated, Mr. Rittenhouse is a flight risk. As such, court is going to impose a $2 million cash bond, believing that is reasonable and necessary and sufficient at this juncture to secure the appearance of Mr. Rittenhouse. In addition, non-monetary conditions are as follows, Mr. Rittenhouse. You're to have no contact with the following individuals. Now, that is no contact at any time, any location, for any reason, through any forum or means. That's with Richard McGinnis, Gage Grosskreutz, Dominic Black, Karen Bloom, John Huber, or Charles Rosenbaum. In addition, sir, you may not possess any weapons of any type, especially firearms. You must appear in court every time when required here in Kenosha County if you are released. You may not commit further crimes while out on bond. Do you understand all of those conditions, Mr. Rittenhouse?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
That's the only thing
Now,
he said all fucking time.
My understanding that that I'll speak to Mr. Richards. As you're aware, Mr. Rittenhouse has a right to have a preliminary hearing held by statute within 10 days of his initial appearance when you're held in custody on a felony case, as he is. There's some discussion off the record. I've been advised, I wasn't a participant to that, but that there's a likelihood that Mr. Rittenhouse, through Mr. Richards, wishes to waive the time to have and ask the court to toll time to counter the preliminary hearing out beyond that 10-day statutory limit. Is that correct, Mr. Richards?
That is correct. I discussed with my client that yesterday, and he's in agreement.
All right, thank you. Mr. Rittenhouse, again, can you hear me clearly? This is the commissioner speaking.
Tim Pool as a song?
All right, thank you. Now, you have a right, sir, when you're held in custody in a felony case in the state of Wisconsin, to have a preliminary hearing held within 10 days of your initial appearance. Do you understand that?
Mm-hmm.
All right, but you also have the right, sir, to waive that time limit, allow this court and ask the court to toll time in order to schedule your preliminary hearing farther out or beyond that 10-day limit. Do you understand that as well, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right. That's what your attorney, Mr. Richards, indicates you wish to do. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Is that what, in fact, you do wish to do, sir?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Then, based upon the defendant's understanding and willingness to waive time, the court will toll time for cause, in this case, pursuant to the request of the defendant and through his attorney, Mr. Richards, to counter the preliminary hearing out beyond the 10-day statutory limit.
Preliminary hearing December the 3rd. Again, that's 12/3 at 10:30 a.m.
Works for me.
All right. Is there anything else? Otherwise, I'll conclude the hearing.
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
No, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. That'll conclude the hearing.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
Vanilla rice. This is fucking standard riot song. Oh my god, don't tell me it's the video is the fucking meme where some artist showed like statues being torn down and other statues being raised in their place, like either on like a gear or something like that. If it's the same thing here, it's just it's not about seeing them singing around, but oh, fucking Dr. K. Oh. It's the fucking thing. Oh my god. This is so... I mean, people might have not seen the meme, so... But it's so fucking cheesy to steal a meme like this. Who's done the video? Directed by this guy, Henrik Schilling. Fuck off. Someone should have told him that this is a bad idea. Okay. ContraPoints.
Never seen that. Wow. How high do numbers go, chat? I feel like this is a Valve Battle Pass TI prize pool kind of thing we've got going on. That's crazy. So, no, I'm pretty sure it tops out at 1050. So, we, or Dr. K, thank you very much for coming today.
Nice to meet you. Yeah.
I really love your, so I think, let's start, sorry, I'm just fixing the camera, which is why.
No problem.
So, do you want to just start, because I know you're predominantly on YouTube or exclusively on YouTube. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about who you are, Natalie, and what kind of work you do?
Yeah, because no one
yeah.
knows.
My name is Natalie Wynn. I am a creator of the YouTube channel ContraPoints. And that is a channel I've been doing for about 4 years. It's changed a lot over the time I've been doing it. And it is, I would say, it's about politics, but it's also, I guess, more generally about internet culture. It's more about the internet culture side of politics. So when I started on YouTube, I was kind of, well, there was a lot of creators who were doing what was called like anti-SJW content, anti-social justice warrior content, ranting about these crazy blue-haired student activists that are destroying Western civilization. And a lot of my early content was aimed at trying to like
Bullshit.
introduce a more measured
I'm calling
discourse around like
bullshit on
social
this.
justice issues, progressive
Early
issues,
content, what, 2
because I
videos?
felt that YouTube was like very, very right wing. The world has changed a lot in 4 years. The internet's changed a lot, YouTube's changed a lot, and I have changed a lot. I am in a different, it's a whole different website, a whole different world now. You know, I'm now just one among a sea of people who's doing sort of what they call like a left to the content now. And I also have, you know, changed genders in that time, because I started, you know, when I started in 2016, I was having like a kind of gender crisis.
Gender
but
crisis.
I shortly realized that I was a trans woman, and I've been transitioning medically and socially since 2017. And all of that's kind of factored into the content that I make on YouTube.
Interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, like, I think your videos are fantastic. I don't know if you have
in before, they're very well produced.
like,
I don't agree with anything, but
I think from an information dissemination standpoint, I
there
think
we
you're
go.
a phenomenal teacher.
Thank you. Before I did this, I was getting a PhD in philosophy, and dropped out.
Yeah,
but,
because it was useless.
I did teach a couple classes, or at least take TA some classes.
That actually makes a lot of sense now that I think about it, because I think what I really appreciate about your videos is, you know, whether you agree or disagree with the content, whatever. But I think from a craftsmanship standpoint, they're very thoughtful, very logical. I think you form a really good like sequence of explaining context.
Oh my god, this fucking Trump.
You know, arriving
Oh, the videos are really well produced. Calm the fuck on.
That's you know, they trained you how to think and construct an argument more than anything else.
Thank you. Yeah, it turned out to be, well, and I mean, like, no one expects to get a philosophy job outside of academia, but I found the one thing where it actually, well, I'm sure it's useful for a lot of things, but it's very
actually
specifically useful for this. Yeah.
In some fields like strategic consulting, they actually highly prioritize or highly value philosophy degrees, because training in philosophy is sometimes training in thinking.
Yeah, it teaches you a certain approach to things.
Yeah,
like
mostly
the ability
teaches you how to cheat
understand
yourself.
The perspective that you disagree with,
It's
or to like
ways
build up
to
arguments
lie to
for an
yourself
argument
better.
that you disagree with, and then like sort of counter it. It's a kind of like, I guess I call it like intellectual empathy, where you understand like why you try to understand what exactly someone else thinks and why
Except
they think
then you
it.
don't.
That's
Then
maybe the
you
more
just
psychological side is why.
I was going to say that sounds
then
like
you're
my
just passive aggressive
Yeah.
towards people you disagree with,
Yes,
and
it's
put it in
definitely-
a video with
definitely
a.
more psychology.
with
So
a
Natalie, I don't know
purple
how familiar you are
backlight.
with Healthy Gamer, but if I can just orient you to how we do interviews. So you know,
And
we
4K
usually we'll
obviously,
have
or
guests
8K.
who maybe like, you know, prominent in a particular field, but we don't really talk about the work that they do. So it's not like a, you know, we're really here to learn about people.
Yeah, sure.
And I think so. Oftentimes I'll ask questions that are like personal. So like I want to know about you as a person and your journey, as opposed to any particular political views that you may believe in or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, if a political view that you have relates to something personal in your life, I think that's actually like totally cool. But generally speaking, you know, we talk about people, and I think a lot of what our viewers really appreciate is seeing themselves in the person that they're talking to. So the discussions tend to be a little bit more personal.
Sure.
That being said, you know, if there is anything that you're welcome to draw whatever boundaries you want around the discussion. I'm not here to try to expose anything or anything like that. You know, like if there's something that you feel uncomfortable with, you're welcome to say, hey, I just don't want to answer that. And then if I notice you're getting uncomfortable, I may actually point it out to you and then ask for permission to proceed.
Okay, sounds good. I mean, I'm a habitual divulger of information about myself.
Oh,
so
there we
it's
go.
probably going to work out fine.
There we go.
What does that mean, a habitual divulger of information about yourself?
Well, it
Miss
means I
she
enjoy the
can't
confession.
Shut up
the
about
confessional
yourself
format.
in public.
I mean, every couple, you know, twice a year maybe I make a video that's really more about me than about anything else.
Right.
What do you enjoy
Isn't
about
every one of your videos more about yourself than anything else?
I suppose I'm interested in myself because I'm around this person all the time, and sometimes I form opinions. I guess I don't know. It feels there's also maybe a kind of there's probably some kind of therapeutic thing for me. It feels good to sort of
Therapeutic breaks.
speak your truth, as it were. I don't know. It can also be sort of. I think it can be unhealthy just sometimes when you're I don't know. For instance, I find it easier sometimes to talk to 1 million people than to talk to one person. In that, I think especially online, there's a kind of when you're producing, I'm sure people can relate to this when you're posting anything on social media. There's a kind of illusion of solitude that comes from being alone at your computer, are often alone in front of the camera, which is often how I'm filming, right, and how I'm writing, and so I'm sort of gotten over this. I'm becoming more a professional. But there used to be a time when I would, the first time that I would see the video I had just spent 100 hours making in the YouTube player itself, I would have this moment of panic, like, oh God, like other people can actually see this. Like this is not just my private
but that's
video
just because
diary
you
that I've
already
been working on. But I don't know. I guess it feels good to sort of like share what you're going through, and oftentimes, a bunch of other people will find something relevant to themselves about what you shared, and so that to me is very. Well, it often makes you feel less alone. When you hear that other people have been through something similar.
And that's actually exactly what we're about. We're about, I think a lot of the reason I started streaming was because what I noticed is I was having the same conversations like over and over and over again, and everyone thought that they were alone with their struggles.
Yeah.
And what it turns out is that everyone is struggling with the same stuff. It's just that's not what we advertise, right? We put on a mask and we show people something else. And so everyone else gets the impression that the world is like a lot of people who are doing fantastic, whereas really all of us are struggling.
Yeah.
And so,
well, I think there's like a leap of faith almost that happens when you put out something very personal, because you're, maybe everyone thinks you're crazy. Or maybe, and this is a leap of faith, the fact that you are going through something in private that's not often discussed is going to turn out that 10,000 other people are going through that same thing, and they all connect with you. So you're sort of hoping, or even if you're not going through exactly what you're going through, it relates in some way to their own experience, and so you're hoping they connect on some level.
Yeah, so can you share with us, has there been a particular leap of faith that you've taken that's surprised you in terms of how people responded to it?
Oh, let's see. There's been a few. Trying to think of the best example. Well, I did a video a long time ago on incels, the incel movement. And I kind of, in the last part of that video, related a lot, because so I spend a lot of time on incel forums. Like part of what I do when I cover an internet, some facet of internet culture, is I will go into the forums and I'll like sort of spend time learning the vocabulary and learning like what are the concerns, how what are the usual objections that people give to incels that they've heard 100 times and are just already don't want to hear. And so I guess what I found is that like there was something kind of profoundly, I guess, relatable to me about the like obsessive like self-abuse that a lot of like incels have, right? This kind of putting themselves down all the time, and to the point of like physiologically, like anatomically analyzing their defects in great detail. And that, it reminded me, I guess, of
so you don't
a lot
understand
of
them
like
at
the
all.
uglier trans spaces online, which in a different, in a kind of different context, involve exactly the same thing. which is like a kind of an obsessively negative, self-harming, like analysis of your own anatomy, right? The black pill, right? That's what incels call it. The idea that, you know, because of their, you know, inferior bone structure, that they are doomed by nature to have a lonely life. That,
yeah, and so you said that you said it sort of resonated with you on some level, or it was.
It did,
felt
yeah.
familiar?
I found something familiar about it. You know, right down to some weirdly specific parallels, like a concern about the shapes of facial bones.
And do you mind if I ask you a little bit more, like, personally about what it was that resonated with you, or what kinds of thoughts that you've had about yourself? I'm assuming we're talking about thinking about yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, at the time, I was actually considering going through like major facial surgery to change my appearance, which I ended up doing. But it's funnily enough, it's actually a frequent topic on incel forums too, where they'll talk about basically doing all the opposite things of what I did. You know, augmenting the jaw and to get a stronger, more masculine look, and you know, strengthening the brow bone, and doing all these things that give them that like chiseled, Chadley appearance.
And so what is it that, how does changing your physical appearance, how does that relate to the way that you perceive or feel or talk to yourself? Like, how do you, like, you know, what motivates you to do that, and what does it mean to you to do that?
Well, I think it's something that most people do to some extent. Like, I think everyone with a mirror has some kind of thing about themselves they don't like. I think that when you're trans, like I am, like there's an additional layer of it. Whereas, I mean, I went through a period where, like, I mean, I was presenting, appearing to the world as a man, and that's how, like, that's a very drastic sense of what I'm seeing in the mirror is wrong. And I think that, you know, I think that's not as, you know, it's a complicated question, isn't it? Like, how much of that dysphoria, gender dysphoria, how much of that is just what it means to be trans as part of who we are, has to be respected, and how much of it is a kind of negative, like, internalized hatred, because society views trans people with a very cruel gaze. And sometimes it's not clear, like, what is gender dysphoria, and what is just me internalizing this
what
kind
does
of
trans have
ugly
to do
way that
with
people have
how
of
you
looking
hate
at trans
yourself?
people.
You hated
So,
yourself
Natalie,
before
do you
you
mind
were
if I
trans.
ask you some questions about, like, what your sense of, like, kind of where you grew, I mean, not so much in terms of details about where, but like what your upbringing was like, and how you learned that you were
I
trans.
wonder if you get to that.
Yeah, I can talk about that a little bit. I mean, I had, I guess, in my early childhood, I had a pretty normal boyhood in a way. Like, I actually don't, like, pre 12 years old, I actually look back on that time mostly with positivity. I think that, you know, I was sort of neither the most, I was certainly not the most masculine boy, but I was not feminine to the point where it was a major problem. But when I was a teenager, I guess I sort of began, there was this, like, discontent.
I had a friend in this following, Michelle Malkin.
Sense that something is wrong. In my
Noted.
20s, it just got worse and worse.
Can you explain that feeling? Like, how would it manifest? Or I'm just imagining that there's, like, someone who's 19 who's watching right now, and how would they know, you know?
Yeah, how would you know you're trans? Well, it's a question I get a lot. Well, it gets, a lot of trans people will tell you that it's easy. Like, oh, if you're even questioning it all, that means you're trans. I don't agree with that. I think that a lot of people question their gender for a lot of reasons. And I think that, you know, whether you're raised as a boy or as a girl, like, there's a lot of, like, gendered expectations put onto you. There's a lot of, you know, there's a kind of image of what you're supposed to be doing, a script that you're supposed to be following, and it's everyone to some extent, I think, questions that a little bit about themselves. Like, I think that may be especially true of women, people who are raised girls. Like, that's a very well, I think it's true of men in a different way, but it's there's oftentimes like going to be situations where even if you are just a regular cis woman, like, you're going to think like, this sucks, I don't like being treated like a woman because it sucks. Right. And there's times when it sucks to be a man. Like, absolutely it does. But so to me, it's a question of figuring out, like, not just whether you're responding to those things, but in my case, it's more a question of, I feel like socially, I sort of fit a script for women better. And physically, I have this sense of alienation from my body that is making it hard for me to, like,
alienation from my body.
I feel like I had to be detached from my body or go outside.
Is that even a real
body.
thing, though?
I didn't feel sort of physically connected to the world. And
how much of stuff like that is just people telling themselves they experience shit they're not even experiencing? Like, I can have an out of body experience right now.
Atypical for a man amount of body shaving and or that kind of thing. Just kind of trying to have a more androgynous look, I guess, was something that I'd been doing for a long time. And then I would kind of, like, as a joke, it's Halloween. Well, what if I was a girl?
My
Isn't
son
that funny?
wore my wife's high heels once,
and that kind
so
of
we
thing.
figured
And
there's
at some
something
point,
wrong with him, right? That's the kind of thinking. That's bullshit.
It took me a long time, honestly. There was a lot of denial and excuse making, but I think YouTube in some ways helped me figure it out as I was kind of presenting.
No.
At the time, it was played off as like a bit where I was like going to be a degenerate cross-dresser. That was the shtick.
Actually,
but
I think
so it looks like you used a lot of humor and
yeah, which is it's kind of what because I was sort of aware that, like, like I knew that I didn't look like a woman. Like I looked like a man in a dress, and people think that's the thing that people find funny. So I guess my way of coping with that was
you
to be
think
like, well,
you don't
I guess
now?
it is kind of funny. Let's make it funny.
Okay.
And so I did that. But at some point, I kind of realized, like, this actually is not funny to me. It's like this is what I want to be, and I don't want. I feel like I'd rather live as a woman, and that when I realized that, there was a kind of period where I was going back and forth and being like, no, that's insanity, don't do that. And then times when I was being like, okay, but it's what I want. And, through it was laborious. There was stages. Like, for a while, I identified as, like, gender queer, meaning that I sort of identify with neither gender. I thought of myself as just like an androgynous person. And so I would wear, I was like very ambiguous looking. Like, I'd be wearing nail polish and lipstick, but like still being socially, like, being a man, I guess, using a male name and things, but just being a sort of I don't know, flamboyant or what is the word I'm looking for? Like, adorned man. But I guess at a certain point, I realized that I wanted to. There was like a medical component.
I wanted to. Yes.
I felt well, I felt that, like, there was a problem.
You wanted to do something.
At a certain point, it's not just about, I painted my nails. So lots of men paint their nails. That's fine, right? Oh, I wore a dress. Well, men wear dresses all the time. Like, but at a certain point, I was like, but like this is not what I want to be. I don't want to be a man in a dress. I think I'm supposed to be a woman, and. It was all very gradual. I kind of stumbled into it. Like, some people, I don't know, different trans people have different stories. Some trans people that they know from the age of 3, they just have this strong inner conviction they're a different gender. That's not really my story. To me, it was more just like a series of, like, gender problems and gender confusion. that just kind of settled on this.
Natalie, how has your internal experience, or how have your feelings changed, or your thoughts changed as you've walked along that journey? So I'm trying to envision, like, when you were 16 years old and you looked in the mirror, like, how did you feel about yourself and what did you think about yourself?
Well, I think when I was very young, like that, I kind of like found a way of expressing these feelings through like just being a pretty boy, you know? And like I was like, well, that's fine. Like that's kind of me, you know? But I guess that's
this guy doesn't fucking know what the fuck is going on.
When I got a bit
The
older,
brain
like,
of this person is such a
like that
clusterfuck.
kind of role,
Mostly
you know,
narcissism.
at some point, like, can you be a 40-year-old pretty boy? Like, I don't know. Maybe you can. Like, I'm sure that there's Hollywood actors and stuff out there who I would describe it that way. But
exclude
I guess I kind of realized
yourself.
Like, you know,
in fact,
being a boy was okay, but being a man wasn't.
To be like,
if that makes sense.
Sure.
Bipolar with self-hate, so you
boys and girls and men and women, I think there's
go to extreme lengths to make yourself pretty, but then you hate yourself.
Exactly,
more and more.
Exactly. And so that's kind of how I see myself. Like, as I could perceive myself kind of becoming a man, that really, like, triggered this sense of dread and feeling of wrongness. Like, no, like, I'm not supposed to be that. And so I think that I also, around this time, like, you know, I was not raised with a knowledge of trans people, not in any detail.
I didn't know I was a trans person.
So, you know,
what do you dread about being a man?
And then I learned about it, and everything clicked into place.
That's a good question.
Hold on one second. Sorry, my producer's calling me.
No problem.
Hey, what's up? Sure. Testing. 1 second, Natalie. Sorry, it seems like my mic is a little bit low. Testing. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Testing. 1, 2. I'm gonna just move it. Okay. Testing. Okay. Sorry about that.
No problem.
So you were saying, I was asking you, what did you dread about being a man?
Yeah, what did I dread about it? Well, I guess I sort of felt like that it wasn't an expression of myself, and that's very. I know that's kind of vague. That I feel like I'm not making it clear. It's a kind of feeling that's hard to put into words. It's like I would just look at women and see like that's what I should be doing, you know? Like I sort of it's a matter of at a certain point kind of like identification. Like I think that most people get their idea of what it means to be a man or what it means to be a woman from other men and women. Like you sort of form role models, I guess. You have like sort of trans people and cis people are similar in a lot of ways. Like we all, you know, have some version of our gender that's like we feel like that's us, you know. And obviously there's a lot of different ways of being a man. There's a lot of different ways of being a woman. But I guess, you know, and I think when you're an adolescent, especially, you're kind of experimenting with different options. Like you might sort of try to be 6 different people between ages 13 and 18.
Kids up.
That's pretty common.
Gotta go.
But like what happens when you start admiring you start seeing yourself in women and not in men?
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
So I guess what you identify with or what you strive to be or the kinds of role models you have happen to be not from your gender.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, you know, people say when I was in med school and trying to figure out what I wanted to do, what people told me was like, you know, don't worry about the field, like think about the kinds of doctors that feel like role models to you.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm kind of curious, you know, going through surgery, I'm trying to find the right word for it. I feel like drastic is a little bit judgmental, so I'm trying to steer clear of that word. But, you know, let's put it this way: it's a big step, right? So medically transitioning.
Yeah, like drastic is not entirely wrong. I know it has like a little bit of a negative connotation of like taking things too far, but it is it's a significant decision to make, especially like, you know, the main surgery I've had is facial feminization, which is a terrifying surgery. Like you're changing your face, which is a very personal thing, you know. I think, and there was a lot of fear about that going into it. I thought, like, am I gonna lose myself? Like, am I gonna not look like me anymore?
And what happened?
Well, as it turns out, I basically just love it. I feel like I look more like myself now than I did before.
Interesting.
In my case, it was the right decision. But it's certainly not something to do lightly. I think it's good to spend a few years honestly thinking about it before you're doing it, because it's an ordeal. It's an ordeal to go through. It's a lot of pain and difficulty and expense to put yourself through. But I think, like, to me, I mean, especially as someone who's on camera all the time, like, it really was a preoccupation that I had with, like, you know, especially once I knew that what was possible. I was like, I want, this is something I need for myself.
Yeah, so let me ask you something. So I probably am a little bit disrespectful towards incels more so than I should be. But I sometimes kind of struggle a little bit with like that balance of changing yourself, because there's a part of me, and I think this like sort of doesn't internally make sense to me. There's a part of me that says that, you know, it's completely fine if you want to change your body, but something within me recoils from the idea if I was talking to an incel and they said, you know, I want a more masculine jawline, or I want this kind of facial surgery to make me look more Chad-like. And I'm really not trying to make fun of them now. Sometimes I do that, and I probably shouldn't.
It's hard not to, because they do say some ridiculous things, or very misogynistic things.
And so I'm just trying to understand, like, you know, is that the same, or is that different?
I think it's a complicated question. Like, you know, there's incels who are talking about plastic surgery, who are fixated on plastic surgery. Within feminism, there's discourse about, like, is this just women trying to meet, like, oftentimes like racist and patriarchal expectations about female beauty, instead of just learning to love themselves as they are. So I would say, like, I think that even an incel or you know, cis woman, like, has a right to get plastic surgery as well, of course. I think that these, like, desire comes from a different place, though, in a different there's a different kind of justification for it. Like, I think what's kind of like aching us out about incel plastic surgery is that oftentimes the explanations they give for why they're doing it are based on things that are kind of false and deranged. Like the notion that you need this certain jawline for women to be attracted to you, and that's going to fix everything. Like, that doesn't make sense, and it's probably not true. And it just comes from a fundamentally misguided, like, idea of, like, I mean, and again, I don't want to say it's always the wrong thing to do. Like, maybe you have an incredibly weak chin and you just genuinely do look a lot better with a stronger jawline, and that's gonna make you happy. Like, maybe so, but maybe not. And I've seen a lot of people posting on incel forums where it's like, there's patently nothing wrong with your face, and they've kind of scapegoated this. They say, this is my physical appearance, like, that's why I'm lonely. Like, that's the problem I have with women. Like, if I change this, like, everything's gonna be fixed. And that is delusional thinking, because I don't think having a stronger jawline is gonna suddenly make you, you know, women magnetized.
I mean, honestly, so my experience with the incels, and part of the reason that I make fun of incels, is that I find that when I talk to a person, I have trouble. I've been looking for what I call a true incel for a long time. And what my experience has been is that anytime you talk to a person who identifies as an incel, I the more I talk to them, the more that I get to know them, I can't find an incel in them. You know, what I see is just relatively regular level of insecurity or concern about their appearance.
You make fun of people who have
but it's
problems with insecurity.
I just wonder a little bit about some of these.
He's bullshitting her
feminist
to
communities that sort of talk about
to make her talk.
Body type that is essentially the result of the patriarchy, and I'm wondering actually if the converse is true, and that's what the incels feel. That there's sort of this. I mean, it sounds actually like the same argument where it's like there's a feminine standard of beauty.
What the fuck? That was a nice shot.
People are being judged and aligning towards that, and I never thought that feminists and incels would be making the same argument. But
why not?
Well, I think that I guess incels tend, when we talk about surgery, they tend not to be super critical of it. Like they feel that there's this male standard of beauty, but oftentimes instead of attributing that to say like patriarchy, this like social circumstance that could be changed, they attribute it to like evolution, nature of the dating market, and the nature of like the competitive mating and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Or they seem to think that the female brain is just wired to like this kind of draw, whereas I think that the feminist critique is more is founded in the idea that like, oh, this is all socially constructed.
The jawline is socially constructed.
I think that with trans surgery, it's kind of complicated because there's kind of a little bit of two different things going on. One is like gender dysphoria. There's a person's individual internal sense, often totally against what a person has been raised to think they should be, right? Like I was raised to think I should be a man. Why am I not doing that? Like, because there's something individually about me that is like projected, the script I was handed. And so I think that like part of the reason for my wanting to have surgery was really just to my personal desire to see myself as I feel I should be, even against society to want me to look like that. However, when you start, I live as a woman and people judge me as a woman, and they judge my appearance as they would judge a woman's appearance a lot of the time, with some complicating factors because of the fact that people know that I'm trans. But I think that it's a question I definitely struggled with when I was, preparing to get surgery. Is like, who am I doing this for exactly? Like, am I doing this because this is me? This is what's gonna make me happy? Like, this is what I want to see in the mirror. Like, this is all for me. Or am I doing it because I think it's gonna make me look more socially acceptable, more desirable to other people, more easily able to assimilate into other, into society. And the answer is both.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's actually, I really love that you mentioned that, because it's like, where does the desire to change come from?
Yeah.
Does it come from wanting something from other people? Right? So if let's say like I want a stronger jawline to attract more women, that feels to me like it's a desire to change yourself to accommodate or have something to do with the outside world. Whereas what I'm hearing,
all about other people and what they want.
And what I'm hearing from you is that like the fundamental difference is like, I mean, not to say that you don't want something from the outside world as well, but that there's a difference between wanting to be satisfied with the way that you look for your own sake, as opposed to wanting to look a particular way for other people and to get something from other people.
Absolutely. Like, I think that for incels, this is all, they don't particularly seem to care about looking in the mirror and seeing this, whatever, their flawed jaw or whatever it is, except that they think that this is holding them back socially or sexually. And like, if they could just fix this part of their anatomy, then, this would be a means to the end of attracting women.
And so, Natalie, as you transitioned, how were you judged? What's that been like for you?
Well, it's not easy to, especially online. Like people online are just horrible in general. Are pretty horrible in general. They can be anyway. Maybe not be amazing, but there's a lot of like judgment and negative judgment. I think women get scrutinized very, very heavily based on their appearance, and then trans women in particular, I find attract a certain like not from everyone, but there's a subset of people who are sort of have this cruel obsession with trans people and sort of analyzing them and deconstructing them and just picking us apart. and that's something that I've experienced a lot. And I would be lying if I said it didn't get to me.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, people, when you will see, sometimes it's YouTube comments, sometimes it's responses to your tweets or comments on Instagram. They'll have to say these. So for me, it mostly isn't that. It's mostly it goes on like in a secluded part of the internet. There used to be a subreddit called Gender Critical, which is like ostensibly like a trans exclusionary radical feminist way of thinking, but which often kind of
what does that mean?
So there's a faction of radical feminists who are like vehemently opposed to trans people.
Oh, you're just finding out about this?
Trans women. They basically don't think that being a trans person is legitimate. They view trans women as men who are kind of impinging on female space, sort of invaders.
Interesting.
It
sounds like gender appropriation.
Yeah, that's often an argument they'll make. And then they view trans men as like our lost, damaged sisters who are just internally misogynistic and trying to be men to escape. But like, oftentimes
people will just judge other people for all kinds of stuff.
Oh yeah, but it often just devolved into like simple like a roasting basically. And it's not just them. It's not just these people. There's a lot of people on the internet who enjoy this. If you ever go to 4chan, God help you. Like there's parts of that website where they sort of will obsess over trans people, and it's like it's especially bad if you're
There's a lot of criticisms to be made for 4chan, but oddly enough, and hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn, I was really surprised recently. So I sometimes I work with people with autism, and it seems like it's actually a pretty supportive place. It's for people with autism. It's kind of strange.
It's a complicated website. I mean, there's parts of it that are pretty pleasant. There's parts of it that have even like kind of like fostered some of the good parts of the internet, and people will anonymously without any expectation of thanks or reward like do very nice things for each other. I've absolutely seen those things happen on 4chan, but then it can also devolve, and it sort of depends on which form you're in, but it can devolve into just incredible nastiness and cruelty also.
Yeah.
And I think that especially that tends to be a thing that happens with trans people. So I don't know, it's been a common experience that I'll run across. I've gotten better at just avoiding this kind of thing, but you run across a forum, wherever it is, where people are just like, they're posting pictures of you or videos of you, and they're just like tearing you apart, like your physical appearance. They're misgendering me. They're dead naming me. They're saying like, oh, look at his giant shoulders. Look at his like, will anyone ever believe that's a real female voice? Like, of course not. And like this kind of, it's just, it's very mean. Or they call you a sexual pervert and say that you're just narcissistic, and it's. So a lot of it's very like cruel, I guess.
And how does that? I mean, what's it like to be on the receiving end of that?
Well, you feel like a butterfly pinned to a board, or like a vivisection in a way. It's very it hurts. It does, and a lot of I think of myself as a very thick-skinned person. Like, I'm a person who's been arguing on the internet for four plus years professionally. I am acquainted with negative comments and negative feedback, but I feel like this style of thing in particular has really hurt my self-image, and it has kind of caused me to become like preoccupied with my appearance in a way that I think if I were not online, I never would have cared this much, and in a way that I feel like
oh my god, that was a placement match.
Pathological.
What kind of
because fuck.
Well, I feel
matches.
I feel like I have to be very prepared to go on camera. When I look at myself in the I'll glance over here and look at my my own monitor basically, and I'm just sort of analyzing it. I imagine the things that people are going to say about me. And I guess what happens is you sort of internalize this very negative way of looking at you. And the worst part is you end up just applying it to yourself, and maybe worse still, applying it to other trans people.
What does that mean, applying it to yourself?
Well, you sort of look at yourself with the same judgmental, mean kind of gaze that other people look at you.
So, please let me know, Natalie, but I find myself like wanting to know the actual thoughts that go through your head. That when you see, like and I would imagine that actually your criticalness of your appearance fluctuates. First thing, I would hypothesize. And I'm curious about, when it's more active, what are the actual thoughts that you have about yourself? Like what kind of thoughts go through your mind?
Me. I will sort of, if I'm filming a video, for example, I'll be looking over in the monitor and I'll think like, ew, I look like such a transsexual. And I'll say, well, you are a transsexual, you idiot. Of course you look like one. And then, I'll listen to recordings of my voice and be like, oh God, like that does not sound good. And, it sounds like a fake voice. It sounds like I'm trying too hard. Or I will, I can't watch like my old videos. I can't watch videos from 2 years ago where I was sort of like not as good at this as I am now. And those are just horribly painful.
And when you say horribly painful, so I'm gonna share something with you. Oh, well, let me just start off with this. So I'm noticing there's actually two things. One is your reaction, and the second is your reaction to your reaction. And I think a lot of toxicity that people struggle with in terms of the way they view themselves actually comes from that second part, right? One is so just to kind of repeat back to you, and this is why I'm asking. So I want to try to illustrate this point for other people too, that you look at yourself and you say, oh, I look like such a transsexual. And then
it's pretty bad.
Sometimes people, clip what I say and take it out of context.
I always think about that too.
And I just realized this is gonna be memes. It's gonna be great.
Let's see.
So
what was that clip?
You say to yourself, "Oh, I look like."
I always think about that too.
And I think a lot of toxicity that people struggle with in terms of the way they view themselves actually comes from that second part, right? One is so just to kind of repeat back to you, and this is why I'm asking. So I want to try to illustrate this point for other people too, that you look at yourself and you say, oh, I look like such a transsexual. And then sometimes people, clip what I say and take it out of context.
I always think about that too.
Oh my God. That's what you were thinking about? Really? But Natalie was thinking about it because she was hoping that he also feels like a transsexual.
Really? It's gonna be great. So you say to yourself, "Oh, I look like such a transsexual," and then actually, I think that's actually okay to me. But I think the really damaging thing that we do to ourselves is we say, "Of course you do. You're a fucking transsexual."
That's
right?
great.
Yeah. And so the funny thing is that you can respond to that initial observation in two ways, which is like.
So this is how it works. A transsexual goes to a psych, especially like a friendly or someone who's like, they know that they're also vested. This probably works like a mafia. So if you get one psych to to diagnose you with gender dysphoria, then there's a bunch of people who get diagnosed by the same doc with gender dysphoria. And then you have this asshole right here who doesn't challenge this at all. He just moves on like it's been diagnosed squarely. But it's not really his fault. Everyone else has been doing the same thing. Nobody. Once you get one diagnosis from one psychologist, I'm betting every other one doesn't even bother checking if the first diagnosis was correct. Because why would they? And so gets laundered. She can go to any number of psychologists and invoke the first diagnosis she had. She can still claim gender dysphoria, even though she probably doesn't have symptoms. This is so stupid. This is why this psychology is such a mess. Like, how does this guy even know she has gender dysphoria? He's never seen anything, any proof. And he certainly didn't ask for any proof. He just heard her talk a bunch of nonsense about it. About herself, really. Not about gender dysphoria, but about herself. Stuff that you can learn on a Reddit forum. Like, I can go to a Reddit forum right now and read all the relevant terminology and then pretend I've already been diagnosed with gender dysphoria. It's such a nonsense. Okay, I'm gonna host Flamenco now. Mr. Flamengo, host the channel. Oh, it takes a while for him to show up on Twitch. Let's see. SFO. ShortFatOtaku.
Hey guys, no video today.
Yeah, no video any day. Non-Clownsky. Copy link address. What's this?
Now, for 2,000 years, from classical Greece and Rome all the way through classical liberalism, such ideas were considered an abomination. The idea that you should be subject to somebody else's will, the idea that it's a wonderful thing to have a job, it's a wonderful
Chomsky's
thing
an idiot.
to spend most of your waking life as the servant of a tyrant who has more power over you than Stalin ever dreamed of. Stalin never said, you can have a bathroom break at 3 p.m. for 5 minutes, or here are the kinds of clothes you have to wear.
So it seems like you have some similarities with Jordan Peterson on this issue, and I wanted to know if you had any disagreements with what he says.
Frankly, I pay very little attention. I mean, there's some issues on which I probably agree with Hitler. No, it doesn't mean much.
Vast outcry of outrage over the communist monsters who were carrying out this horrifying bloodbath.
So it seems like you have some similarities with Jordan Peterson on this issue, and I wanted to know if you had any disagreements with what he says.
Frankly, I pay very little attention. I mean, there's some issues on which I probably agree with Hitler. No, it doesn't mean much.
Vast outcry of outrage over the communist monsters who were carrying out this horrifying bloodbath and so on and so forth. Interestingly, in all of there was a tremendous amount of fabrication, just plain fabrication of evidence.
Okay, now we're hosting Flamenco. Flamengo. Okay. Oh shit, he has no views here.
I wanna hop on real quick and just say hi. Augie.
Yo, what's up?
I love your giant Minecraft penis, my dude.
I did not make that.
Oh, you didn't make that? Okay.
I thought that was your I thought that was your artistic tour